Questions. Sometimes when people see us talking to ourselves, they think we've gone crazy. But let me tell you something. It's not crazy to talk to yourself. It's crazy not to. Questions. Because if you don't talk to yourself, the world will tell you who you are. And when the world defines you, you'll always live beneath your potential. Questions. There was a time in my college days when I felt completely lost. No direction, no confidence, no idea who I was becoming. One day my mentor asked me, "Do you talk to yourself?" I said, "Sir, questions. I'm already single. If I start talking to myself, people will stop inviting me to weddings or so." He smiled and said, "Beta, questions. The most important conversation you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself." That day, I began something small. Every morning, I'd look in the mirror and say, "Questions. I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become." At first, it felt weird. But slowly something changed. Because what you repeatedly tell yourself becomes what you start believing. Questions. Let's understand something powerful today. Your words are not just sounds. They are seeds. Every time you say, "I'm not good enough," you plant a seed of doubt. Questions. "I can't do this." You water that seed with fear. But when you say, "I can, I will, I must," you plant a tree of confidence. So if your mind keeps hearing negativity, questions, you'll start seeing negativity, even in sunshine. But if your mind keeps hearing positivity, you'll find light even in darkness. Imagine you have two friends living inside you. One is Mr. Questions, positive, and the other is Mr. Negative. Now, every time you say, "I can't," Mr. Negative gets stronger. And every time you say, "I can," Mr. Positive grows muscles. Questions. So the question is, who are you feeding today? Because the one you feed becomes the one you become. Let me tell you about a woman named Kara. Questions. She was told she could never walk again after a terrible accident. Doctors said, "It's impossible." But she started talking to herself. Every morning, she whispered. People laughed. Questions. Even her family doubted. But she kept talking to herself until her words became her reality. 2 years later, she walked onto a TEDx stage. With braces, yes, but she wore. Questions. When she was asked how, she said, "My body was paralyzed, but my words were not." For friends, if you don't speak life into yourself, the silence will fill with your fears. Even in our scriptures, questions, there's power in words. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, a person is his own best friend and his own worst enemy. That means you are your own motivator and your own destroyer. Questions. So choose your words carefully, because your words are creating your world. And so how can we apply this? Here's a simple daily practice. I call it the mirror talk. Every morning, questions. Stand in front of your mirror and say 3 things. Affirm who you are. I am strong, calm, and grateful. Affirm what you will do. I will give my best today. Affirm what you will become. Questions. Yes, I am becoming the person I admire. It will feel awkward at first. But remember, everything powerful starts awkward. My friends, stop waiting for the world to validate you. Questions. Stop waiting for people to believe in you. Start talking to yourself with faith, with fire, and with love. Questions. Because the day you start believing your own voice, that's the day the world will start believing you too. So next time you doubt yourself, stand tall and say, "I am enough." Questions. I am capable. I am becoming who I'm meant to be. And keep talking to yourself until the voice of fear becomes silent, until doubt turns into confidence, until you become what you say. Questions. Have you ever noticed that when you plant a mango seed, you don't get lemons? You get mangoes. It's nature's simple law. You reap what you sow. The same law applies to your life. Questions. Every word you speak, especially to yourself, is a seed. A seed that takes root in your mind, grows in your thoughts, and finally shows up in your actions. Questions. The fruit you experience, whether it's success, peace, or failure, is born from the seeds you've been planting through your words. Let me tell you something very real. Questions. Most people underestimate the power of their own voice. We often say things like, questions. I'm not good at this. I always mess things up. My luck is bad. Or maybe I'm just not meant for this. Every time we repeat such lines, questions, we are sowing the seeds of limitation in the soil of our own heart. And guess what? Those seeds will grow, slowly, quietly, and powerfully. Imagine this, you have two people starting their day. Questions. The first one wakes up, looks in the mirror, and says, another stressful day, I hate this job, my boss doesn't value me. The second person wakes up and says, today is another opportunity. Questions. I will do my best and I am grateful for what I have. Both of them step into the same traffic, face the same workload, meet the same challenges. But one of them feels drained, questions, and the other feels driven. Why? Because of the seeds they planted that morning. Your words define your internal atmosphere. Just as we can't expect a rose to grow in a desert, questions, we can't expect peace and positivity to grow in a mind filled with self-doubt and negative self-talk. The truth is, your outer world is simply a reflection of your inner words. Questions. If your inner conversation is full of complaints, criticism, and hopelessness, your outer life will reflect it. But if your inner conversation is filled with faith, gratitude, and vision, questions, you'll begin to see transformation. Think about the farmer. When he plants a seed, he doesn't expect an immediate harvest. He knows it takes time. He waters it daily, nurtures it, questions, and protects it from weeds. Similarly, when you speak positive words to yourself, I can improve, I can learn, I am growing stronger. It may not change your life overnight, questions, but over time, these words will take root. They'll start influencing your mindset, your choices, your energy, and eventually, your destiny. Questions. Let's take a simple example from daily life. Learning a new skill like public speaking. The first time someone tries it, they might stutter, forget their lines, or get nervous. Questions. Many people walk off the stage thinking, I can't do this, I'm just not confident. And that becomes their truth. But the few who walk off saying, I can improve, questions, this was just the first step, end up mastering it. Why? Because one group planted seeds of defeat and the other planted seeds of growth. Over time, those tiny questions, consistent positive affirmations became towering trees of confidence. Even scientific research supports this. Psychologists have proven that self-talk affects your brain's neural pathways. Questions. Positive self-talk strengthens the regions associated with motivation and action, while negative self-talk activates the regions associated with fear and avoidance. So when you tell yourself, questions, I can't, your brain stops trying. But when you say, let's figure this out, your brain starts searching for solutions. The mind literally obeys the words it hears. Questions. Now think about the kind of words you've been planting in your life. Have you been telling yourself, I'm too old to start again? Or, I don't deserve happiness? Questions. Or maybe, I'll never succeed like others. If yes, then it's time to change your seeds. Because the harvest you want will never grow from the seeds of self-doubt. Start planting words of faith. Questions. Tell yourself, I can start again. Every setback is a setup for a comeback. I may not be there yet, but I'm closer than I was yesterday. Speak words that lift you up. Questions, not pull you down. You see, we often water the weeds more than we water the flowers. We keep replaying our failures, our mistakes, and our pain, instead of nurturing our dreams and strengths. Questions. But remember, whatever you focus on grows. If you focus on your weakness, it grows. If you focus on your strength, it grows. The question is, which garden are you cultivating inside your mind? Questions. Let me share a simple story. A young boy once went to his grandfather, complaining that life was too hard. The grandfather said, "Inside every person there are two wolves. One is angry, fearful, questions, and doubtful. The other is calm, courageous, and kind." The boy asked, "Which one wins?" The old man smiled and said, "Questions. The one you feed. Every word you say to yourself feeds one of those wolves. When you say, 'I can't,' you feed fear. When you say, 'I will try,' you feed courage. Over time, questions. The one you feed becomes stronger, and that's the one that leads your life. So the next time you're about to say something negative about yourself, pause. Ask questions. Is this the seed I want to plant in my mind? Because you're not just speaking, you're sowing. And what you sow today, you will live tomorrow. Your words have creative power. They can heal questions. They can inspire, they can rebuild your confidence, and they can reignite your purpose. Even when life feels tough, speak faith. Even when things fall apart, speak hope. Questions. Your words are not ordinary. They carry the energy to shape your reality. Don't let fear write your story. Let your faith hold the pen. Start planting seeds of strength, gratitude, questions, and belief through your words. And remember, when you consistently speak good things about yourself, the universe begins to conspire in your favor. So, talk to yourself with kindness, with love, questions, and with conviction, because your words today are designing your destiny tomorrow. You may not see the result immediately, but keep nurturing your garden. And one day, questions, you'll wake up to find your life in full bloom. Questions. Every day we have hundreds of conversations with our friends, colleagues, family, even strangers. But there's one conversation that continues silently in the background. Questions. From the moment we wake up until we fall asleep. It's the conversation we have with ourselves. And that, my friends, is the most powerful, most influential, and most important conversation of all. Questions. Because while the world can only talk to your ears, your self-talk goes directly to your soul. You see, the way you talk to yourself determines the way you see yourself. Questions. And the way you see yourself determines the way you live your life. You might be smiling in front of others, but deep inside, questions. There's a constant voice whispering, "I'm not enough. I don't belong. I can't make it." That voice is like background music. You may not consciously hear it all the time. Questions. But it shapes the mood of your entire day. Let me share something simple but real. Imagine you wake up in the morning, and before you even step out of bed, your mind says, "Oh no, I'm so tired." Questions. This day is going to be horrible. What happens next? You spill your coffee, you get stuck in traffic, and suddenly every small inconvenience feels magnified. Why? Questions. Because your first conversation with yourself was negative. You already decided how your day would go before it even started. Now imagine the same morning, but this time, questions. You wake up and say to yourself, "It's a new day. I may feel tired, but I'm grateful I got another chance to live, to grow, to try." Nothing magical changes. The traffic is still there. Questions. The workload is still waiting, but you change. The energy you bring into the day transforms everything you touch. Questions. This is why the conversation you have with yourself matters more than any motivational talk, more than any social media quote, and even more than what others say about you. Questions. Because you spend more time with yourself than with anyone else. You are the one you wake up with, and the one you go to sleep with. So if your internal dialogue is toxic, questions. No amount of external validation can bring you peace. Think of it this way. If someone stood next to you all day saying, "You're useless, you'll never make it," questions. "You're a failure," how long would you let them stay? Probably not even 5 minutes, right? You'd walk away. But when that voice comes from inside your own mind, questions, you allow it to live rent-free for years. You wouldn't tolerate that negativity from someone else, So why tolerate it from yourself? The conversation with yourself is like the GPSs of your life. Questions. When you feed it the right destination, positivity, growth, purpose, it will guide you there. But if you keep telling yourself you're lost, the GPS can't take you anywhere. Questions. You keep going in circles, trapped by your own words. Let me give you a real life example. There's a young man I once met named Ravi. He wanted to start a business, but had failed twice. Questions. Every time he tried again, his inner voice said, "You're just not made for this. Maybe you should just stick to a job." That conversation became his prison. One day, his mentor asked him questions. "Ravi, what do you tell yourself every morning?" Ravi thought for a moment and said, "That I'll probably fail again." The mentor smiled and said, "Questions. Then you're already halfway there. To failure." He told Ravi to change his conversation, to start saying, "Every failure is feedback." Questions, not the finish line. It sounded cheesy to him at first, but he did it anyway. Slowly, that internal conversation began to shift. He started to believe in possibilities instead of problems. Questions. Within a year, he launched his third business, and this time it worked. Not because the world changed, but because his words changed. Your self-talk is the foundation of your self-worth. Questions. When you tell yourself you can, your energy aligns with that belief. You start acting, trying, and persisting. When you tell yourself you can't, your body and mind quietly agree. Questions. And you stop even before you begin. In our scriptures, there's a beautiful idea. The world outside is a reflection of the world inside. When your inner dialogue is peaceful, questions, even chaos feels manageable. But when your inner dialogue is full of fear and comparison, even calm moments feel stressful. So, start listening to your own inner voice. Observe what it says. Questions. Is it supportive or sabotaging? Does it cheer you on or tear you down? Awareness is the first step. Once you hear the lies you've been telling yourself, you can replace them with truth. For example, questions. When your mind says, "I'm not smart enough," respond gently. "I may not know everything, but I'm learning." When it says, "I'm alone," remind it, questions, "I'm growing into my strength." When it says, "I can't handle this," answer back, "I've handled things before." Questions, "I'll handle this too." This internal conversation is not about fake positivity. It's about truthful encouragement. It's about becoming your own best friend instead of your worst critic. Questions. Because when life gets tough, your self-talk will either push you forward or pull you under. Questions. We all need cheerleaders in our lives, but the most reliable one must be the person you see in the mirror. You can't always rely on others to lift you up. Questions. But you can always rely on yourself to choose better words. Even on your hardest days, tell yourself something kind. Whisper hope into your own heart. Every time you talk to yourself with compassion, questions, you're healing the parts of you that were once hurt by the words of others. Every time you choose understanding over judgment in your inner dialogue, you're rewriting your story. So, questions, take a moment today, not to scroll through your phone, not to complain, but to talk to yourself. Ask, how am I really feeling? And then speak strength into that feeling. Questions. Tell yourself you are worthy, capable, and deserving of peace. Because the truth is simple, the world will always talk. Some will encourage you. Questions. Some will discourage you. But the voice that will decide your destiny is your own. When that inner conversation becomes loving, confident, and clear, questions, the outer world automatically begins to align with it. Remember, your inner dialogue is not background noise, it's the script of your life. So choose your words wisely. Questions. Talk to yourself in a way that makes your soul feel seen, your dreams feel possible, and your heart feel alive. And one day, questions, you'll realize that you didn't just talk to yourself, you transformed yourself. Questions. Have you ever noticed how a song you hear repeatedly on the radio starts playing in your head, even when you're not listening to it? You might not even like the song at first, questions, but after hearing it again and again, you start humming it. That's the power of repetition. The same rule applies to your mind. Whatever it hears the most, good or bad, it begins to believe. Questions. Your mind doesn't judge whether the message is right or wrong. It simply absorbs what you feed it. It's like fertile soil. It will grow whatever seeds you plant. Questions. Whether they are weeds or flowers, your thoughts are like echoes. If you keep telling yourself questions, I can't, I'm not worthy, I always fail, your mind accepts those statements as truth. Over time, they become part of your identity. You stop questioning them. Questions. But when you start feeding your mind with empowering words like, I am learning, I am growing, I can do hard things, your brain starts wiring itself differently. Slowly, questions. Your internal belief system changes, and so does your life. Think of your mind as a sponge. It soaks up whatever it's exposed to. If you constantly hear negativity from news, gossip, questions, or even your own inner critic, it gets saturated with fear and doubt. But if you surround yourself with positivity, gratitude, and possibility, your mind begins to radiate that same energy. Questions. The inputs decide the outputs. Garbage in, garbage out. Goodness in, greatness out. Let's take a simple example. Imagine a child learning to walk. Every time they fall, their parents clap and say, questions, come on, you can do it. The child smiles, stands up, and tries again. Now imagine if the parents said, oh no, you fell again. Questions, you'll never learn. The child's belief would break before their legs even got strong enough to walk. That's exactly what happens to us as adults. The words we hear, especially from ourselves, questions, decide how far we go before giving up. There was once a student who was terrible at math. Every time he got a low grade, he'd tell himself, questions, I'm just not a math person. His mind started believing that statement so deeply that even before he opened his textbook, he already felt defeated. One day, questions, his teacher noticed his struggle and said, you're not bad at math, you just haven't found your way of understanding it yet. That one line was like a reset button. Questions. The student started replacing his inner statement, I'm bad at math, with I can learn this. Over time, he began improving. Not because his brain changed overnight, questions, but because his belief did. This is why it's so important to be conscious of what you say to yourself. Your mind listens carefully, and it remembers. It believes repetition more than reason. Questions. You might know logically that you're capable, but if you keep repeating, I can't, logic loses the battle. On the other hand, if you keep telling yourself, questions, I'm improving, even when you fail, your mind will start building evidence to support that belief. Let's look at an example from daily life. Suppose you're preparing for a job interview. Questions. If all week you keep thinking, I'm going to mess this up, your brain starts producing anxiety chemicals. Your heart races, your hands sweat. Questions. And your words stumble, not because you're incapable, but because your mind has already accepted failure as truth. But if you train your mind to say, I'm prepared, I'm calm, questions, I'm ready, your body and energy align with that thought. You walk in confidently, speak clearly, and connect better. The mind's belief becomes the body's behavior. Questions. Even science agrees with this. Neuroscientists say our brains have something called neuroplasticity, the ability to rewire based on repeated thoughts. Every time you repeat a statement, questions, positive or negative, you're strengthening that neural pathway. So if you keep saying, I'm unlucky, that pathway becomes a highway. Your brain starts finding evidence to confirm questions. But if you start saying, I attract good things, your brain starts noticing opportunities. that were always there but hidden under negativity. Your mind is like a loyal servant. Questions. It doesn't argue with you, it obeys you. If you say, I'm tired, it finds ways to make you feel more tired. If you say, questions, I feel energized, it starts releasing chemicals that make you feel alert. Your mind takes your words as instructions. That's why it said, be careful what you say. Questions, because your mind is listening. Think about professional athletes. They spend hours not just training their bodies, but training their minds. Before a race, they don't say, questions, I hope I don't lose. They say, I'm going to win this. They repeat it again and again until their mind fully believes it. And once the mind believes, the body follows. Questions. That's why athletes visualize success long before it happens. The repetition of belief becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Now let's relate it to something we all face. Failure. Questions. Every one of us has failed at something. Some people stay stuck there, while others rise stronger. The difference is not luck. It's the story they tell themselves afterward. One person says, questions, I failed, so I'm a failure. Another says, I failed, but I learned. The first person's mind believes in defeat. The second person's mind believes in growth. And guess who tries again? Questions. The one who believes there's still a chance. So, take a moment and think, what have you been telling yourself repeatedly? Because those repeated thoughts are designing your destiny. Questions. If you've been feeding your mind with, I'm not enough, it's time to change the playlist. Start playing, questions, I'm learning, I'm capable, I deserve good things. Even if it feels unnatural at first, keep going. Just like that song on the radio, your mind will eventually start humming along. Questions. Remember, consistency creates conviction. You might not believe positive words immediately, but repetition builds faith. Say it every day, when you wake up, when you fail, when you're afraid. Questions. Keep speaking life into your thoughts. Over time, you won't have to force positivity. It will become your natural state. Because your mind is always listening. It's waiting for instructions, questions, waiting for direction. So speak to it with love, with power, and with faith. Feed it the right words, and it will build the right world for you. In the end, questions, your reality doesn't start with action. It starts with belief, and belief starts with repetition. Whatever your mind hears most often, it will eventually accept as truth. So, questions. If you want a better life, give your mind better words to believe. Speak to yourself with the voice of possibility, not limitation. Because when your mind believes in your greatness, questions, your life will start proving it. Questions. Inside each of us lives two voices. One that pushes us forward, and one that pulls us down. One that whispers, you can, and one that screams, you can't. One that sees opportunities, questions, and one that sees only obstacles. These two voices are like two characters living inside your mind. Let's call them Mr. Positive and Mr. Negative. Every single day, questions. They battle for control over your thoughts, your emotions, and your destiny. And the winner of that battle is simple. It's the one you feed the most. Mr. Positive wakes up with gratitude. Questions. Even when things aren't perfect, he says, at least I have another day to try again. Mr. Negative wakes up complaining, what's the point? Nothing ever changes. Mr. Questions. Positive looks at a problem and thinks, there must be a solution. Mr. Negative looks at the same problem and says, this is impossible. They both live inside you. Questions. You can't completely get rid of either, but you can decide which one gets stronger. Let's think of this through a daily example. Imagine it's Monday morning. You wake up late. Questions. You spill coffee on your shirt. You rush out the door and realize you forgot your wallet. Mr. Negative immediately jumps in. Great, this is going to be a terrible day. Questions. Why does this always happen to me? The more you listen to him, the louder he gets. By the time you reach work, your mood is gone, your energy is gone, and everything feels wrong. Questions. But let's replay the same situation with a little twist. You spill coffee, yes, but Mr. Positive says, well, at least I didn't spill it on my laptop. Questions. Let's change and keep moving. You laugh at your own clumsiness, put on a fresh shirt, and move on. The situation didn't change, but you did. That's the power of feeding the right voice. Questions. You see, both Mr. Positive and Mr. Negative feed on attention. Every time you complain, you feed the negative one. Every time you express gratitude, you feed the positive one. Every time you worry, questions, you're handing food to fear. Every time you speak hope, you're nourishing faith. The question is, which one are you feeding daily? Questions, because whoever you feed the most will soon become your mindset. Think of it like this. Imagine you have two plants in your house. Questions. One plant is called faith and the other is called fear. Every day you water one of them through your words and thoughts. Questions. If you keep watering fear with I can't, I'll fail, it's too hard, that plant will grow tall, strong and wild. It'll overshadow everything else in your garden. Questions. But if you water faith with I will try, I'm capable, good things are coming, it will slowly bloom and fill your life with fragrance. The simple truth is, questions, whatever you nurture in your mind grows. Now let's take a real life story. There was once a young woman named Anjali who wanted to run a marathon. But she had asthma, and the first time she trained, questions, she could barely jog a kilometer before gasping for air. Mr. Negative in her mind said, this is not for you. You're weak. You'll never make it. For a while she listened. Questions. She even thought about quitting. But one evening she decided to change the conversation. She told herself, maybe I can't run the full race now, but I can walk. I can train. Questions. I can try again tomorrow. For each day she chose to feed Mr. Positive. With small encouragements, small victories. 1 kilometer became 3. 3 became 5. Months later, questions. She crossed that marathon finish line. Tears rolling down her face, she said something simple. The race was not against others. It was between my two voices. Questions. I just stopped feeding the wrong one. But in life, we all have that same race every single day. When things go wrong, when people criticize you, when plans fail, both voices show up. Questions. Negative is loud, dramatic, and emotional. He loves attention. He'll remind you of every mistake, every failure, every insecurity. Mr. Positive, on the other hand, is calm. Questions. He speaks softly, words like, you'll get through this, you've done it before, you're stronger than you think. But to hear him, you must silence the noise of negativity. Questions. You can't stop negative thoughts from visiting, but you can stop them from staying. You can choose which thoughts to dwell on, just like you choose which guests to entertain at your house. If Mr. Questions. Negative knocks at your door, you can say, sorry, I'm busy feeding my faith today. Don't serve him tea and biscuits. Let him go hungry. The more you ignore him, the weaker he becomes. Questions. Every time you face a challenge, pause and ask yourself, which voice am I feeding right now? Because if you give all your energy to doubt, you'll run out of strength to act. Questions. But if you feed your belief even a little bit, you'll find the courage to keep going. That's how resilience is built. One positive choice at a time. Questions. Think about successful people you admire. They're not people who never hear Mr. Negative. They're people who learn not to give him the mic. Questions. They've trained their minds to amplify the positive voice. And you can do the same. Start small. When you catch yourself saying, I can't, add one word. Questions. I yet. That single word shifts your energy from limitation to possibility. Instead of this is hard, say, this is challenging, but I'll learn. Each time you reframe your words. Questions. You're feeding Mr. Positive a feast of encouragement. This doesn't mean you'll never feel down or defeated. Life will always have moments that test you. But even in those moments, questions, you can choose how you respond. When the storm hits, Mr. Negative says, "See, everything is falling apart." Mr. Positive says, "The storm is strong, but so am I." The storm may not pass faster, questions, but you'll stand taller through it. Remember, you don't become positive overnight. It's a daily decision, a conscious habit. Every thought is like a vote. Each time you choose faith over fear, questions, hope over doubt, gratitude over complaint, you cast a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Eventually, Miss Positive wins the election in your mind, not by luck, but by loyalty. So, questions, from today, be mindful of the voice you feed. Protect your mind the way you'd protect your home. Don't let negativity live rent-free. Talk to yourself like someone you care about deeply. Questions. Encourage yourself, uplift yourself, and celebrate your progress. Because at the end of the day, your life will mirror the voice you chose to listen to the most. Questions. And when you finally stand at the end of your journey, tired but fulfilled, you'll realize something profound. Mr. Negative was never your enemy. He was your test. Questions. He showed up to give you a choice, to prove how strong your faith could become. And the day you choose to feed your Mr. Positive with love, gratitude, and belief, questions, that's the day your life starts to bloom from within. Questions. Confidence is not something we are born with. It is something we build, brick by brick, word by word. And the most powerful bricks in that foundation are the words we say to ourselves. Questions. Your self-talk, those quiet, private conversations you have in your head, shapes not only your confidence but also your destiny. Because before you ever speak to the world, you speak to yourself. Questions. Before you ever take a step forward, you convince yourself that you can. And before you ever rise to greatness, you first whisper to your soul that it is possible. Questions. Imagine for a moment that your mind is a stage. Every day a voice stands there with a microphone. That voice can say, "You're capable. You can handle this." Questions. You've got what it takes. Or it can say, "You're not enough. You always mess things up. You'll never succeed." Both voices exist within you. Questions. But the one that gets the mic the most often determines how confidently you live your life. The voice you give power to becomes the narrator of your destiny. Let's look at a simple example. Questions. Think about a student preparing for an important exam. One version of that student wakes up saying, "I've worked hard, I can do this." The other wakes up saying, "Questions. I'm going to fail again." Both students might have studied the same amount, but their outcomes will differ. Why? Because one approaches the paper with belief and the other with fear. Questions. When the confident student faces a tough question, they think, "Okay, let's figure this out." When the doubtful one sees the same question, they freeze. Questions. The difference lies not in intelligence, but in inner dialogue. Their words shape their response, and their response shapes their result. Your self-talk creates your emotional atmosphere. Questions. It's like the background music of your life. If the music is uplifting, you feel brave and ready. If it's gloomy, you hesitate, doubt, and shrink. Questions. Every great achievement begins with a sentence that was first spoken in the mind. "I can do this. I will try again. I am worthy of this." Those words become beliefs. Questions. Beliefs become actions, and actions become destiny. Think about people you admire. Leaders, artists, athletes, entrepreneurs. Behind every success story is a long conversation of self-encouragement. Questions. The world only sees the highlight reel, the medal, the applause, the success. But behind the scenes were countless moments of silence where they talked to themselves, saying, "Keep going." Questions. Don't quit, you're closer than you think. That's where real confidence is born. Not from applause, but from consistent self-belief, when no one is watching. Questions. Take for instance a young woman named Ria who dreamed of becoming a public speaker. But the first time she stood on stage, her voice trembled, her hands shook, and she forgot half her speech. Questions. The audience was kind, but inside she was broken. Mr. Negative in her head shouted, "You're not made for this. You embarrassed yourself." For days, she believed that voice. But one morning, questions, she decided to change the story. She stood before her mirror and said, "It's okay. Every great speaker was once a beginner. I'll learn, I'll grow." Those simple words became her fuel. Questions. Every morning she repeated them. Until one day she didn't have to anymore because she had become what she said. Years later, Ria stood before thousands of people delivering motivational talks. Questions. When asked how she built her confidence, she smiled and said, "I didn't build confidence. I built myself, talk, and confidence followed." Confidence isn't arrogance. Questions. It's quiet assurance that your efforts matter. It's trusting your abilities even when the results haven't yet shown up. And that trust grows when your self-talk becomes kind, strong. Questions. And disciplined. You see, the world outside can only echo what you believe inside. If you believe you're not capable, no amount of praise will convince you otherwise. Questions. But if you believe in your worth, no amount of criticism can shake your foundation. Sometimes we wait for others to build our confidence, for someone to compliment us, approve of us, questions, or recognize our efforts. But the truth is, external validation can only decorate your confidence, not construct it. Real confidence is handcrafted within your mind. Questions. Through the words you whisper to yourself every day. When you start affirming your worth, your energy changes. You walk differently, speak differently, and think differently. Questions. People around you begin to sense your strength, not because you tell them you're confident, but because your presence says it for you. Even science supports this truth. Questions. Psychologists call it the self-fulfilling prophecy. When you repeatedly tell yourself something, your brain looks for evidence to prove it right. If you keep saying, questions, "I'm bad at this," your brain highlights your mistakes. But if you say, "I'm improving every day," your brain starts noticing progress. Your self-talk literally programs your focus. Questions. What you focus on expands, and what expands shapes your destiny. Let's bring this to a personal level. Think about how you talk to yourself when you fail. Do you say, "I'm such an idiot"? Questions. Or do you say, "That didn't work, but I'll try another way"? The first statement kills confidence. The second builds it. Questions. Failure is not what destroys us. It's the cruel words we say to ourselves afterward that do. But when we replace those words with kindness and encouragement, questions, failure becomes a teacher instead of a wound. There was a beautiful line once shared by a wise monk. If you spoke to your best friend the way you speak to yourself, questions, would they still be your friend? Think about it. Most of us speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone we love. We criticize, we compare, we call ourselves names. Questions. And then we wonder why we lack confidence. Confidence doesn't grow in harsh soil, it grows in the warmth of compassion. So, start changing the conversation within. Questions. Begin each morning with a few empowering words. Look into the mirror and remind yourself, "I am capable. I am growing. I am doing my best." When you face a tough situation, say, questions. "I've handled things before. I can handle this too." These words are not empty. They are nourishment for your mind. And the more you feed your mind with positivity, questions, the stronger your confidence becomes. Over time, your self-talk will shape not just how you feel, but who you become. The person who believes they can eventually does. Questions. The person who believes they can't never tries. Your words decide which path you walk. So be your own encourager, not your own enemy. Let your inner voice be the wind beneath your wings. Questions. not the weight on your back. Speak to yourself like someone whose life depends on it. Because it does. Your destiny listens to your dialogue. Questions. What you whisper in your own heart becomes the story of your life. And when that story is written in words of faith, courage, and kindness, questions, it will lead you to a destiny far brighter than you ever imagined.